You can spend your entire life trying to convince people with the perfect words,
or you can discover that they're already responding to what you're transmitting without saying anything.
The law of thought transmission reveals the hidden mechanism, your internal states. The sensations and the mental images that you hold about someone are being telepathically transmitted right now. An internal state is the living combination of what you feel and see when you think about someone.
When you close your eyes and feel your partner adoring you, choosing you, and desiring you, that state is traveling to their consciousness. When you imagine that difficult person being kind, collaborative, and respectful, that transmission is happening. This works because there has never been any real separation between minds. There is a secret correspondence between all desires, a network that connects every consciousness, the principle that governs everything. How you imagine and feel about people in the silence of your mind is how they appear in the noise of your life. The ex who doesn't reach out to you, the boss who doesn't recognize you, the friend who always disappoints you. They're all playing out the script that you write internally about them. The choice is yours. To keep trying to change people from the outside in, or to understand that the real power lies in the state that you cultivate about them. Transform the internal state, and reality will bend to your vibrational state.
When someone changes their attitude without anything visible happening, something silent was already underway. The human mind isn't an island. It's a transmitting field that projects, receives, and reorganizes impressions. What stays alive within a person doesn't remain in them. It reaches the other person as an impulse asking for a response. Neville Goddard described this precisely. Changing someone's behavior means changing how you conceive of them. The image you hold of them is the mold they use, without knowing it, to express themselves in your presence. Every thought sends out a vibration wrapped in the belief you maintain about that person, and they pick it up. Consciousness is a sensitive mirror. Everything you believe about someone gets recorded in this mirror and returns as behavior, words, or gestures. When the reflection changes, it wasn't the other person who transformed first, but your view of them. This is the foundation of thought transmission. Every idea held with emotion and conviction passes through the other person's conscious mind and reaches the subconscious, where automatic reactions are shaped. The receiver doesn't realize something was sent. They simply begin to act according to the vibration they received. Relationships change, reconciliations happen, and habits dissolve. Not through persuasion, but through state replacement. When you start seeing someone as already being what you wish them to be, the subconscious accepts this image as fact and begins to reproduce it. Neville called this process assuming states. It's not about convincing the other person, but about assuming within yourself the certainty that the new state already exists. The adjusted consciousness becomes the conductor. What's held with clarity and consistent feeling inevitably spreads. To sustain this transmission, you need inner mastery. Inconsistent thoughts send contradictory signals. Fragmented emotions distort the message. The mind must remain stable in the chosen state. When conviction is total, the result is inevitable. Imagination is the instrument. In it, the operator mentally represents the other person, not as they seem to be, but as they are in the desired state. This representation isn't fantasy, but a causal impression. The mind that creates the picture is the same one that transmits the signal. What's seen internally with authentic emotion tends to objectify itself. Observe someone close to you and notice how you describe them internally. This description, stubborn, cold, kind, competent, is a command that shapes their behavior in front of you. When the description changes, the behavior also changes, even without dialogue. Thought charged with feeling bypasses the other person's resistance and settles in the subconscious. What's accepted there reproduces naturally. And if there's no visible response, the reason isn't in the other person, but in the sender. When the result fails, It's a sign that the operator is still oscillating between two states, the old and the new. The practice is simple, but it requires consistency. Sustaining the state is the secret. The operator needs to remain faithful to the new vision, even when faced with contrary evidence. The physical world adjusts with a delay because it reflects the pattern that has become dominant. When the new image becomes natural, the mirror reacts. The other person begins to express what you already saw in them, not through imposition, but through attunement. The shared vibration harmonizes. This law doesn't recognize distance. Thinking is an act that ignores space. Imagination operates in fields of consciousness, not in miles. You can be 1,000 miles from someone, and still, the transmission occurs. The link is mental, not physical. The emotional tone is what makes the difference. A cold image has no power. A living image creates form. What's felt as truth within you converts into a cause outside of you. When there's silent faith, not as belief, but as a feeling of reality, the vibration is already moving. The attentive operator observes their own reactions. With every thought about someone, they ask themselves, "What am I sending now?" Not as judgment, but as fine-tuning. Consciousness is the transmitter. Emotion is the frequency. Thought is the form that travels. Over time, this practice stops being a technique and becomes a way of living. Mentally speaking, with others in their ideal state, it becomes natural. The mind learns not to perpetuate old images, and relationships change in silence. The visible transformation is the last stage. Before it, there's the internal moment when the new state becomes so familiar that the old one loses power. At this point, external change is inevitable. Assuming states about others is the practical application of thought transmission. It's the moment when the individual stops reacting to what they see and starts defining what will be seen. Everything assumed with clarity communicates, everything communicated with faith manifests. The mind stops being a spectator and becomes an agent. The mirror reflects what's fixed in it and nothing else. Every thought sent out finds a response. Nothing circulates alone in the field of consciousness. Neville Goddard called this the law of mutual correspondence, the principle that every desire exists because there's a compatible reception point. No idea sustains itself in a void, it needs an echo. This reciprocity is automatic, governed by vibrational affinity between sender and receiver. When someone imagines another in a certain state, joy, confidence, balance, this image is transmitted, and the other receives it according to their capacity to accept it. If the idea is compatible, it's absorbed. If not, it returns to the sender with the same intensity. Neville describes this movement as a natural form of internal justice. The mind that projects resentment, fear, or guilt attracts equivalent versions of these frequencies. The same field that transmits also returns. Emission and reception are faces of the same operation. What you send is what you live. That's why he said, giving presupposes the ability to receive. Every attempt to impress an idea on another mind is also proof of your own capacity to accept it. Those who sincerely wish good for another manifest that good first in themselves. The vibration needs to be active to be shared. This symmetry prevents abuses within the law itself. No hostile thought remains directed at another without returning. When the receiver doesn't accept the suggestion because they don't wish that for anyone, the impulse returns to its origin point, carrying the same pattern that generated it. Neville calls this the ricochet mechanism. The transmission fails to penetrate and returns to the only possible terrain, the sender. Thought only exists where there's enough attunement to sustain it. So, those who project harmony receive harmony. Those who send criticism receive circumstances that mirror that criticism. Everything sent to the field returns as a reflection of the state that created it. This reciprocity is the invisible foundation of human relationships. Each interaction is sustained by a circuit of continuous mental exchanges. Words are surface. What moves the relationship is in the silent flow of ideas and images. When two people meet, what really occurs is the meeting of two belief systems that mutually reflect each other. Desire isn't individual. It arises because there's a correspondence available. Desiring something for another is recognizing that this same state is already present in yourself, at least as potential. Desire is the signal that there's a channel ready to be filled. This understanding transforms the nature of wanting. There's no struggle to conquer something, there's a tuning adjustment. The operator aligns with what they desire, and in doing so, naturally attracts people and situations that vibrate in the same pattern. It's a law of automatic balance. What's sustained internally manifests externally. Reciprocity also explains why thought transmission is selective. Not all ideas sent are received. The mind rejects what it doesn't recognize as possible or desirable. If someone tries to impose a thought that contradicts the receiver's core, the message finds no space and returns, making the sender experience the effects of what they produced. Hence, the importance of the emotional content that accompanies each mental image. What's sent with resentment carries the seed of the same experience. What's sent with gratitude and respect generates equivalent return. Neville summarizes, "What you can desire and believe of another can be desired and believed of you." When the operator understands this, practice becomes conscious. They stop emitting contradictory thoughts and treat every mental image as active correspondence. If they imagine the other being honest, they reinforce the same state in themselves. If they imagine the other balanced, they awaken inner balance. This process creates a virtuous circle. The more you think well of others, the more you reinforce your own pattern of well-being. The mind learns to vibrate at increasingly higher levels of coherence, and relationships respond with less friction and more fluidity. The law also clarifies what happens with destructive thoughts. A hostile impulse, when accepted by both, creates a field of mutual conflict. When it's not accepted, it returns to the sender, bringing sensation, event, or obstacle of the same vibration. It's the principle of as you sow, so you reap. Everything transmitted seeks balance. The mental universe doesn't sustain a permanent imbalance. If the operator maintains judgments or contempt, these states surround them until they're neutralized. Refusing to sustain them dissolves the circuit. Mental silence in these cases is deactivation. When the operator learns to use mutual correspondence consciously, they don't project what they wouldn't like to receive. They start selecting their thoughts like someone choosing construction material. Each assumption is a seed, each image an instruction. Universal reciprocity is the axis that guarantees order within the law of thought transmission. It prevents the process from becoming one-sided and establishes a system of constant self-adjustment. What's sent returns, what's accepted manifests, and what's rejected neutralizes. The external world is the record of these invisible exchanges. Relationships, encounters, and coincidences are reflections of this correspondence. Nothing is isolated. Each mind acts as a mirror and a transmitter. With this understanding, the operator perceives a pattern. The clearer the internal state, the faster the return. Clarity of intention determines the speed of reflection. The mental field responds in exact measure to the consistency maintained. Giving and receiving stop being distinct actions. They're the same movement in opposite directions. When this is understood, every relationship changes tone. Thinking well of someone isn't a virtue, but a vibrational strategy. The energy maintained in relation to the other defines the type of response the world will offer. Mutual correspondence is the silent balance of consciousness. What's affirmed outward returns as experience. What's desired for another manifests in both. What's rejected always finds its way back. This is the law that sustains all others. No thought fails to find its reflection. According to the law of thought transmission, there's no real boundary between minds. The separation that the senses register is just a convention of perception. Consciousness is continuous, indivisible, and operates as a single field where all individualities coexist. Each person is a modulation of this field, a frequency variation in the same mental substance. This principle redefines what we understand by distance, presence, and communication. When a mind thinks, the content of the thought isn't inside it. It's in the shared field where all other minds are immersed. Thought is a modification of the medium itself, and that's why it can be perceived, interpreted, and replicated by other consciousnesses. The distance between sender and receiver is only apparent because what transmits the information isn't physical space, but the underlying mental fabric. This reality is like a light reflecting in the mirror of the mind. Each consciousness is a sensitive mirror, capable of reflecting and reproducing the vibrations transmitted to it. This is how imagination transcends time and space. Thought doesn't travel. It simply manifests in another part of the same field, like a ripple spreading across the water's surface. What we call the external world is, in this view, the collective reflection of images held within the unified consciousness. Each being is a lens projecting part of this total image. The differences between individuals aren't boundaries, but viewing angles of the same content. Consciousness isn't contained in the body is contained in consciousness. This unity explains why mental transmissions work immediately. When someone imagines another in a certain state, they're not sending something at a distance. They're activating within the universal field the frequency of that state, and the other, as part of the same field, responds to this modification. What changes at one point in the system reverberate in all the others. Neville states, consciousness is closer than hands and feet, more intimate than breathing. This proximity eliminates any possibility of true isolation. Telepathic communication is just a natural consequence of this structure, not an extraordinary phenomenon, but a normal function of a field without divisions. In practice, this means that mental states don't stay confined to the individual. Emotions, images, and assumptions enter the continuous flow of universal consciousness and are picked up by those who share vibrational affinity. The emotional environment that each person feels when coming into contact with another person is largely the result of this subtle and constant exchange. This understanding also changes how we observe everyday events. Each event is seen as the meeting point of multiple converging mental transmissions. What we call coincidence is actually the intersection of compatible vibrations. When two people think of contacting each other at the same instant or have the same idea in different places, they're just expressing the unified nature of the mind. Imagination is the medium through which the human mind experiences this unity. When you imagine being in another place, the act isn't symbolic. It's a real displacement of consciousness within the field. Imagination transcends time and space because time and space are just modes of organizing thought. They're internal conditions, not external boundaries. He writes, although physically separated from a place by thousands of miles, you can mentally live in that place as if you were present. This principle is what allows distant prayers, healing transmissions, and silent reconciliations. The operator doesn't need to move the body or speak aloud. They just need to internally assume the state corresponding to the reality they wish to produce. This ability to mentally inhabit other places or conditions shows that consciousness doesn't obey the laws of matter. The body occupies space, the mind doesn't. When you mentally live in the desired destination, consciousness reorganizes circumstances to align the physical world with the new inner position. Reality bends to the dominant state because both are made of the same substance, vibrating consciousness. The mind is like a mirror so sensitive that it can reflect thoughts, feelings, and images with the same clarity that the eye reflects light. The mental reflection, however, has a creative effect. What's intensely reflected converts into experience. So, each thought about someone is an image projected onto the shared mirror of consciousness, and this image tends to materialize in the corresponding conduct or conditions. This concept of unity isn't just metaphysical, it's operational. When the operator understands that the other isn't really other, thought transmission becomes simple and natural. They mentally speak with a part of themselves, and that part responds. There's no effort because there's no separation to overcome. The collective mind behaves like a single organism. Each thought emitted is a cell vibrating within this body. If one cell changes its frequency, the others respond. This is the basis of collective transformation. Real changes begin when an individual consciousness sustains a new pattern with enough strength to influence the entire field. That's why Neville states that the kingdom of heaven is within. It's not a distant place, but the internal state where all possibilities already exist in subjective form. Imagination is the key that opens these states and brings them to sensory perception. What's accepted as real internally tends to manifest in the visible world because the internal and external are aspects of a single operation. This absence of separation also dissolves the idea of fixed destiny. If everything is consciousness and consciousness is plastic, there's no inevitable course of events. What's called destiny is just the sum of mental states sustained over time. Changing the state means changing the line of events. He writes, "In the living universe, there exists no destiny beyond that created by man's imagination. The future, in this sense, is malleable because it's manufactured in the same field where ideas circulate. Imagination doesn't anticipate what will come, it establishes it." The unity of consciousness also explains the feeling of synchronicity that many people experience. When two minds maintain the same image or emotion, they're not connected at a distance, but are occupying the same point of consciousness. That's why reactions become simultaneous. The field responds as one. Understanding that there's no separation changes the practice of mental transmission. The operator stops sending thoughts and starts living within the reality where the other is already transformed. Instead of imagining the receiver receiving, they imagine themselves living with them in the desired state, as if that state were the natural setting of the relationship. This approach doesn't seek to convince, it recognizes the unity that already exists. When this perception becomes stable, life starts reflecting the same unity. The barriers between I and other, here and there, before and after, lose meaning. The mind that accepts this continuity begins to perceive instantaneous responses to its internal states because the reflection is now direct. The non-existence of separation is the heart of Neville Goddard's philosophy. Everything that exists is contained in the unified consciousness, and each individual mind is a temporary expression of this totality. What changes in one changes in all, even imperceptibly. Each thought is a note within the universal harmony. When this idea is understood, the practice of thought transmission stops seeming mysterious and reveals itself as the natural functioning of a mental universe. The operator doesn't send signals into space. They awaken possibilities within themselves, and the world responds in the same instant because the world is part of them. Consciousness, as the only reality, is the foundation of all manifestation. Everything held alive within it takes form, and every visible form is just the echo of a sustained thought. In this field without boundaries, each being is sender and receiver of the same primordial thought that sustains existence, the I am. Neville Goddard used a technical analogy to explain how thought transmission works, the photophone. The device, invented in the 19th century, transformed sound into light and sent messages through light beams reflected off a vibrating mirror. This technology served Neville as an exact metaphor for how the human mind projects its thoughts and feelings to other minds. In the photophone, the voice is directed at a mirror. The sound vibration makes the mirror oscillate, modifying the light ray it reflects. This light, now carrying information, reaches a distant receiver where a sensitive disc reproduces the original sound. Communication occurs without wires, only through the variation in the vibration of light. Neville described the mind as a mirror. Consciousness is the constant light. Thought is the vibration that modifies the light. When someone mentally speaks with another person, the mirror of the mind vibrates, modulating the light of consciousness that passes through it. This modified light reaches the other's mind, causing corresponding vibrations that reproduce the transmitted message. It's a vibrational translation. Thought doesn't travel as words, but as an energy pattern that the receiver unconsciously translates into impulse, emotion, or action. He writes, "Thinking is speaking softly, speaking is thinking aloud." The mental voice and the spoken voice are different expressions of the same force. The difference is in the density of the medium. One acts in the matter of air, the other in the field of consciousness. Both follow the same vibrational principle. The operator who understands this mechanism learns to direct their own vibration with precision. The mind isn't just a receiver, it's an active transmitter. When thought is sustained with clarity and coherent emotion, the inner mirror vibrates in an orderly fashion. This order projects as modified light, capable of imprinting itself on another mind's mirror. Neville interprets the phrase, "I am the light of the world," as a literal description of this process. The I am, the consciousness of existing, is the light through which all mental activities become visible and transmissible. Each mind is a point of this light, reflecting and modulating the total field of consciousness. The principle is simple. The stronger and more stable the sender's vibration, the clearer the projected image. Scattered thoughts generate diffuse light. Fixed beliefs produce concentrated beams. That's why emotional clarity is indispensable. Doubt introduces noise. Conviction generates coherence. According to Neville, all men possess sufficient sensitivity to reproduce the beliefs that others hold about them. The receiver doesn't need to be aware of what's happening. The subconscious mind functions like the photophone's disc. It automatically reacts to the vibrating light that hits it without analysis or judgment. In the field of consciousness, time and space don't act as barriers. Distance is irrelevant because mental light is omnipresent. The vibration of a thought exists at the same instant at all points of the field. This is why mental transmissions and distant prayers produce effects without physical contact. The medium is continuous. The mechanism also reveals the role of attention. In the photophone, the beam needs to be directed. Similarly, thought needs a defined focus. Attention is the mind's optical axis. It orients the consciousness beam toward the chosen target. Where attention fixes, mental light condenses. When someone maintains focus on another individual, this constant attention acts like the photophone's oriented mirror. The flow of conscious light is projected directly onto the mental image of the receiver. Communication is silent but precise. Each mental word, each sustained emotion, alters the vibration pattern and sends a new modulation. The strength of the transmission depends on the operator's internal state. intense emotions function as amplifiers. Joy, faith, and love generate ordered vibrations. Fear and anger create incoherent waves. The receiving mind reacts according to the shape of the wave it receives. That's why Neville emphasizes the importance of purity of intention and emotional stability. The mental mirror is sensitive. Any emitted vibration, whether harmonic or dissonant, produces a reflection. The law doesn't morally distinguish content, it just reproduces the vibrational pattern. The operator reaps the effects of what they transmit because they're within the same field in which they act. Emitting an idea is exposing yourself to its reverberation. This vibrational model explains the automatic character of manifestation. The conscious mind defines the frequency, the subconscious executes. When a thought is sustained with sufficient persistence to become natural, it becomes a dominant vibration. This vibration organizes external conditions according to the established pattern. This process is comparable to the photograph or image created in the mind. Thought is the negative, reality is the revealed image. The light of consciousness exposes the negative, and the material world prints the result. The time needed for development depends only on the intensity and stability of mental exposure. The effective operator doesn't send requests, they maintain the already fulfilled image. The vibration corresponding to the desired realization is what propagates and awakens the response. When the internal state is one of possession and not lack, the mirror vibrates in harmony with the achieved end, and the receiver picks up this harmony as a natural impulse. This operation doesn't require formal words. A simple mental recollection, charged with feeling, is enough to activate the mechanism. Transmission occurs at the level of subtle sensations, an inner look, a memory, an authentic emotion. The content that stays alive in the emotional field is what communicates. Neville writes that the vibrating mind modifies the light of consciousness reflected in the mental mirror, reaching the one it addresses and imprinting on their mind's mirror what was mentally affirmed. The phrase describes the complete circuit: emission, propagation, and reception. When this mechanism is understood, it becomes clear that the act of imagining is identical to the act of creating. There's no difference between visualizing and communicating. Each strongly felt thought is a message sent to the universal field, and the field responds by reproducing the image in the form of facts. The mental photophone never switches off. Even in silence, the mind vibrates. The predominant emotional state is the basic frequency that keeps the apparatus operating. That's why Neville said, "Consciousness is the light of the world. The light never ceases. What changes is the quality of the vibration it carries." The vibrational transmission of consciousness is, therefore, the natural functioning of the mental universe. Thought is modulated energy. Emotion is its signature. Consciousness is the medium through which everything propagates. Understanding this, the operator starts treating each mental image as a vibratory command. What's sustained with consistency imprints on the field, and the field responds with precision. The inner mirror is the transmitter, external reality is the receiver. Between them, there's no wire, just consciousness in motion. According to Neville Goddard, thought transmission is a conscious process that can be conducted with method and precision. The mind, when it maintains a defined and emotionally charged image, becomes an instrument of modulation in the field of universal consciousness. This principle applies through three fundamental techniques: implicative imagination, revision, and mental diet. Implicative imagination is the foundation. It starts from the premise that everything you desire already exists in potential within consciousness. The operator doesn't visualize the process, but the final result. They mentally construct a scene that could only occur if the desire were already reality. a greeting, a conversation, a feeling of relief. They experience this scene internally with all the senses until it seems like a memory, not an expectation. The subconscious reacts to the dominant feeling, and when the practice ends, the state is already established. Desire stops being a search and becomes an assumed condition. Revision acts on psychological time. The past isn't seen as a fixed record, but as a sequence of editable impressions. To revise is to mentally return to an event and rewrite it with the desired outcome. The operator relives the scene and replaces it with another harmonious version. By repeating this exercise, the subconscious adopts the new record as fact, releasing the old emotional charge. Future circumstances begin to reflect the new pattern. Revision dissolves resentments and changes bonds because when someone is seen differently, the relationship transforms. The relational energy reorganizes because the mental mirror has been cleaned. The third technique is the telepathic mental diet, control of inner conversation. The mind speaks ceaselessly, and each thought is an emission. The diet consists of watching this flow and replacing every negative formulation with images coherent with the desired state. Sustaining only ideas compatible with the sought end is essential. If the goal is harmony, you don't allow internal dialogue of criticism. If the objective is success, you don't feed doubt. Vigilance is immediate replacement. The mental word defines the type of return the operator will receive. These three practices support each other. Imagination creates the model, revision removes interference, and the diet maintains stable frequency. Together, they form the communication circuit between the conscious and subconscious mind, and between consciousnesses within the collective field. Neville describes prayer as the moment when the conscious mind records an impression on the subconscious. This recording is the transmission point from where the vibration follows until it finds expression in the physical world. It's the law of reversibility. What's felt as real internally tends to objectify externally, because internal and external are phases of the same movement. During practice, the operator enters a state of deep relaxation, the controlled sleep state. At this level, barriers between consciousnesses dissolve, and subconscious communication occurs fluidly. Imagination becomes alive, and images gain perceptible density. It's in this state that the operator mentally converses with the other, sees the fulfilled scene, and feels the certainty of realization. The work continues after practice. During the day, the mind must remain aligned with the new state. Contrary thoughts indicate a return to the old pattern, and the mental diet serves to neutralize these relapses. When perceiving contradictions, the operator recalls the final scene and reaffirms the corresponding feeling, maintaining coherent vibration. Telepathic transmission operates continuously, even without intention. Each mental image about someone is a message sent. Training just makes the process conscious and directed. The operator deliberately chooses the content of what they transmit and, consequently, what they receive. When practiced with discipline, these techniques produce perceptible transformations. Relationships adjust, attitudes change, and coincidences multiply. Nothing occurs abruptly. Everything reorganizes as the internal state stabilizes. A recurring principle in Neville is that of successful prayer. Those who pray expecting the result haven't prayed, they've only wished. True prayer occurs when the mind totally accepts the reality of what's imagined. The feeling of possession is the sign that the subconscious received the impression. From there on, manifestation is inevitable. These practices also work as instruments of self-transformation. By imagining another in the desired state, the operator awakens the same quality in themselves. The mind only transmits what it sustains. Choosing the state, feeling the result, and maintaining coherence is the direct method. The laboratory is the field of consciousness itself. Telepathic transmission transforms the relationship between intention and reality. The world becomes a reflection of what's kept alive internally. Imagination establishes the destination, revision corrects the trajectory, and the diet maintains the course. The combination of these techniques constitutes the operational manual of the conscious mind. What's affirmed with clarity and persistence finds echo and returns as form, circumstance, or behavior. When thought becomes focus and focus is maintained with coherent emotion, the mental universe reacts with precision. The invisible organizes itself and becomes visible. This is how the silent idea transforms into a concrete fact. Consciousness is the cause of everything that manifests. What someone keeps alive in feeling and image becomes visible substance. This causality isn't symbolic, it's mechanical within the mental field. When the desired state is felt as natural, manifestation becomes inevitable. Neville stated that all creation follows a regular sequence. First, thought is conceived as an image, then feeling vitalizes it, finally, repetition fixes it as a dominant vibration. At this point, the subconscious takes over execution. The operator doesn't need to intervene. The law does the work. The process is automatic, like a seed germinating after being planted. The external world is the return mirror of this movement. The situations and people that arise are a reflection of what was projected. There's no disconnected event. What appears is always a response to a maintained assumption. Consciousness shapes others' behavior and, simultaneously, is shaped by the ideas they sustain. The exchange is constant. This reciprocity reveals one of the system's most subtle mechanisms: vibrational ricochet. Thoughts that the receiver doesn't accept return to the sender with the same emotional charge they were sent with. Energy doesn't dissipate, it just seeks a new equilibrium point. When an operator maintains judgment or resentment, and the other doesn't welcome it, the reflection returns to the origin point, creating circumstances equivalent to the emotion that generated it. A thought of benevolence, accepted by the other, multiplies in both. The mental field is self-regulating. It amplifies what's in harmony and returns what's in dissonance. That's why Neville said, "The world is a mirror where each person sees reflected the content of their own consciousness." Over time, this pattern becomes perceptible. The attentive operator recognizes the precision with which their assumptions return. Small states of irritation produce external resistances. Emotions of gratitude attract soft responses. The field responds to the quality of vibration, not the form of words. It's emotion that encodes the message. Constant practice reveals that thought not only creates conditions, but also calls to itself people compatible with the maintained state. The mind emits a signal, and those who vibrate similarly perceive it as affinity. Relationships, encounters, and circumstances are organized by this natural attraction. Each person enters another's life at the exact point of vibrational correspondence. Results also confirm themselves in self-perception. By desiring something for another, healing, prosperity, harmony, the operator awakens these same qualities in themselves. The act of transmitting is, simultaneously, the act of receiving. The field doesn't differentiate the sender from the receiver. What's sustained at one point becomes active in the entire system. Neville synthesized this dynamic with the phrase, "Giving is receiving." Those who transmit love feel love. Those who transmit peace experience peace. This isn't a moral instruction, but the description of an inevitable reflection. The mental field doesn't separate the poles, it just reproduces the pattern. The law's operation also explains the persistence of negative patterns. Recurring thoughts maintained by habit form vibrational trails that the subconscious automatically repeats. These patterns can only be altered when a new state is sustained long enough to replace the old one. Conscious repetition is the key to replacement. The process doesn't require effort, just consistency. The operator who remains firm in the new image perceives, little by little, the weakening of previous conditions. People begin to react differently, old situations dissolve, new opportunities arise. The field reorganizes around the new dominant pattern. The law of mental transmission shows that consciousness isn't just a witness to reality, it's the mechanism that produces it. Thoughts and emotions are the codes that define the field's shape. When the operator alters the code, they alter the reflection. The world is a sensitive mirror, and the mirror reproduces without judging. When the mind maintains the desired state with clarity and stable feeling, the result is inevitable. The transmission finds its receiver, the field responds, and the reflection appears. The world is just the visible surface of continuous communication between consciousnesses. Every change begins with understanding your role as co-creator, and the only way to connect with this divine intelligence is through meditation. We've developed a set of audio tools to help you access this higher state of consciousness. To learn more and get immediate access, click the link on the screen or in the comments. If this video resonated with you, write in the comments. It made sense to me.